Today in Lockdown Red Wings, the season ends flat with a 5-0 loss and a 5-game losing streak. But that might have been for the best.
You're Locked On Red Wings, your daily podcast on the Detroit Red Wings. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Lockdown Red Wings podcast. We are your hosts, Brian Fisher and Scotty Bentley. I am a podcast producer for the Daily J, a WWJ News Radio podcast, and Scotty's the host over at Locked On Tigers, as well as freelance journalist for the Detroit News. And first of all, Scotty, congratulations on your Tigers win. You deserve that. You deserve something good to talk about for once.
Golly, man, it has been a minute, ain't it? Yeah, definitely. Vibes are high on the baseball side tonight, even if they're not a great way to end the season on the hockey night. But I mean, we'll talk about it.
Yeah. So, in regards to the game itself, they lost 5-0, fifth straight loss in a row. There's no bones about it. That absolutely stinks. That is an awful way to end the season. You don't want that to happen whatsoever. You know, they weren't playing hardly any of their best players. Stamkos didn't play, Stamkos did play in this game, but, you know, Vasilevsky didn't start. They were starting their backup, and nobody, it felt like, was going full speed, which is understandable on both sides. You had half speed from the Red Wings side. You had half speed from the Lightning side. Neither team had anything to play for. And I was hoping that final game of the season, you'd want to go out on a good note. Like, so it doesn't matter, I guess, Scotty, but it is still frustrating in a way. Like, I understand it doesn't matter. In fact, it probably benefits them more to lose that game, or at least it could have in theory, had Washington not blown a 4-1 lead. But I still wanted them to go out on a high note. You know, go to Tampa, get the win against a team that has nothing to fight for. I don't care if it's like, it would have been a moral victory or whatever, but they were flat. And the same, you know, it's hard to be overly critical because, again, it doesn't really matter. And it felt like nobody really cared watching that hockey game, but it just, with a lack of a better way of phrasing this, it just stunk. It was a big stinker of a hockey game to end the season.
Yeah, it's I think, which is like the frustrating part for me is like, okay, the last game of the season, you looked awful. Well, okay, did you at least look good in the last home game of the season? No. No, you didn't. That was also a big dud. So, yeah, definitely kind of a rough way to end the season. They're just kind of skidding to the finish line, but it's tough. I mean, it's tough. Like it's real tough to not that they're not trying. Like, I would never accuse, honestly, like a professional athlete of not trying like that, but it's definitely one of those things where there's just a completely different mindset where when you have literally nothing to play for and another team, even if they don't have anything to play for necessarily, is still ramping up about to play in the postseason.
And like, maybe the barn itself was real quiet. Like,
yeah, it was just a flat game. It was just flat. It was, I mean, I don't even think this is in the top 3 like worst performances we saw from the team this year, but like, it was just flat. It was just a flat hockey game. There was just like nondescript, not a lot went right for the Wings, obviously. Yeah, just flat is the way I would describe it more than anything.
Yeah, and the Red Wings, I thought the first period of all the periods after they gave up the first goal of the game, the second half of the first period, they played pretty strong. Why are you giving me that look?
First period of all the periods is what you just said, by the way.
The first period of all 3 periods is the period that they played the best, period.
What, dude? What? What? Just say the first period was the best period. We all know there's 3.
Period.
The first period of all 3 periods, including the first, second, and third period, was including the overtime period that was played between the periods.
Period. After the first goal was scored, that's when the Red Wings decided to really start applying the pressure. And unfortunately, nothing came of it. And then second and third period, the Red Wings, like you said, looked very flat. So I guess to be fair, they played half of a period very well. But it's just, and maybe I'm projecting my feelings of flatness onto the game because the team did register over 30 shots in the game. But it just, I don't know. It was hard for me. And as a Red Wings fan and as somebody who does this as a job, it was hard for me to sit there and get wholly invested into a game that I knew mentally meant nothing for the team this year.
For either team.
Yes, for either team.
Like it's just those are tough objectively, no matter like what, those are tough games to watch. Like this game meant literally nothing to any party involved.
The only thing that was worthwhile to watch in this game, as you didn't have Simon Evanson to root for to grow, you didn't have Marco Kasper, you're decimated with injuries. Quite literally, the only thing at this point that was like worth keeping an eye on was the Dylan Larkin watch, right? He was at 79 points in 79 games. The team got shut out 5-0. So Larkin finishes the season with 79 points, ties his career high. It is a career high in points though, but 1 point beneath 80. They still have not had an 80-point score in a decade. It's just, it doesn't matter in the end, right? Like he still had a career high. He was still the team MVP this year without a doubt.
Yeah,
best player on the ice. And the 1 point really doesn't make a difference. It would have just been a nice feather in the cap to a great season. But that was like the one thing of note to watch in this game. And it just kind of, nothing happened. There was no offense. There were shots, but there was no offense.
Yeah.
And that first goal against was just, I used it the other day and I'm going to use it again, an amalgamation of everything that goes wrong with this team. That first goal that was scored in this game by Alex Killorn, it was just the Tampa Bay Lightning controlled the puck for 2 to 3 minutes in the offensive zone. Find a way to get open within the slot, no pressure, rip a puck home over the glove. It might have been under the glove side of Ville Husso for the first goal on their first shot of the game. And just like you watch that and you go, okay, this team is not learning from its mistakes. But again, I'm like fighting this internal battle where it's like, don't bother getting upset, Brian, because it doesn't matter. But like part of me is still like, for the love of God, please. You know what I mean?
No, for sure. I mean, it would have been nice, not even necessarily to go out with like a win, but like, I don't know.
Yeah.
A nice, enjoyable hockey game to watch, like a fun game, like a close game, right? Like one more time we can get riled up about something, or like a close loss, or like this needed to happen for this. But I mean, we've been just talking about this mindset for like almost the entire first segment. Like there's really not too much to talk about in the actual game itself because it was just a flat, nondescript game. Like, goaltending wasn't very good. Defense was pretty on par with what it's been all year. And there was literally no offense to talk about. So there's not even anything to really break down in that regard.
Yeah. I mean, the second goal was a huge, huge deflation to what was already a flat game. I don't know if you can get flatter than flat, but they go down on a 2-on-1. They failed to even get a shot off. Tampa Bay comes back down the ice. Joe Veleno makes a phenomenal defensive play to break up their 2-on-1. And then they just put the puck out in front and they score. Goals 3, 4, and 5, or I guess 3 and 4 in particular. Brain points 50th and 51st on the season. I think he's like the 6th player to hit 50 goals this year too. Offense is wildly up this year. Ville Husso was hung out to dry. The defense did not do any, like just time and space in front of Ville Husso.
Yeah.
And then the 5th goal with 9 seconds left from behind the net. Everyone had given up at that point. I want to sit here and say that I feel like a hypocrite because at the start of the episode, right, I'm like, it doesn't really matter. And it doesn't matter. I'm like, I don't really care. But I guess I do care a little bit because I'm
clearly
as we're talking,
you do, because we're still talking about how you don't 10 minutes in.
Yeah.
It's like that thing when like you break up with someone and then like 3 months later you're like, I don't care. It's like,
I don't care.
I think you care, dog. I think maybe you care a little bit still,
I just I care a little bit about the effort. I care about the
For
performance
sure.
in the final game of
Because
the
that's
season.
something you can control.
Yeah.
Like that's you can't necessarily control. Well, you definitely can't control wins and losses, right? You can't control that. You can't control results 100% of the time. You can't control talent on your roster 100% of the time, but you can always 82 times a year control effort. And so I think that it's a fair thing to bring up.
Yeah, I'm just I'm trying to keep myself from going overboard on a game that didn't matter in the end,
Yeah,
But there
of
is
course.
definitely a part of me that's still frustrated over a 5-0 loss. But we need to get to a break. When we come back, we'll talk about why this loss isn't necessarily a bad thing for the Detroit Red Wings in the long run. Right? Isn't that really funny and ironic?
Of course, that's our next segment. Yeah.
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
This is what happens, man. This is what happens.
So ridiculous.
I gotta talk to you guys today about eBay Motors. For a championship team, it's all about making sure every player is a perfect fit. It's the same when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs to fit just right. So the next time you need parts and accessories, head to eBay Motors. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, you can be sure every part you need fits right the first time around. Just add your ride to My Garage and look for the green check to know that part will fit or your money back. Because just like in sports, confidence in the name of the game when you shop on eBay Motors. And with over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win when the right parts are guaranteed. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. Eligible. Every time I say let's ride, I think of Russell Wilson. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply.
eBay Motors. Let's ride.
All right. Segment 2, Locked On Red Wings podcast. It's going to be one of those episodes, isn't it?
Man, how could it not be? And I don't know, last game of the season, man.
Yeah.
We could have lost 12-0. I would have came on here and been in a pretty uplifting mood just for the sad the season's over. Obviously, I want hockey to last forever, but just we got to end on a high note. We got through another season, and into the off season we go.
Yeah, and I said it before the break, right, Scotty, that we'll talk about why the loss isn't necessarily a bad thing. And that's because, like everything, there's two sides of the coin. We even mentioned it yesterday. If they won, we talk about the fact that they had a 500-point percentage for the first time in a decade. If they lost, we talk about draft position. Well, they lost, so the silver lining to this is draft position. Now, they could have, if Washington didn't blow a 4-1 lead, had it slid up to 8th
Right.
for the draft lottery, the 8th worst, or I guess the 8th best odds in the draft lottery. But because Washington blew a 4-1 lead and Luke Hughes, for his first NHL goal, had a beautiful goal in overtime to win it for the New Jersey Devils.
Beautiful.
The Red Wings lock up the 9th best odds at first overall in the draft lottery. But because they don't win, they don't leapfrog St. Louis or Vancouver for the 10th or the 11th best odds. So by losing this game, you stay in the top 10, which I would argue is a pretty important thing. Not even for the first overall percentage thing. Your percentage then locks at 5% rather than 3 or 3.5%, Scotty. But 9th best odds and 9th overall, if that's where you end up staying pat, which is likely what's going to happen, is better than 10th and 11th because that's 2 more players that you're going to have the opportunity to choose from when your number gets called.
Yeah, no, I have always said that the draft lottery, obviously everyone and fan bases and whatnot always want to look at the odds for number 1 overall. And I have always said that the reason you want a higher pick in the lottery is not to increase your chance at number 1 overall. It's to increase or decrease, I guess, the most that you can fall. That is the most overlooked and not publicized part of draft lottery percentages. That is what I fully believe is 100% the truth. That is why you want better draft position is so that you're guaranteed not to fall back as far, not because it gave you a 2.5 to a 3.5% chance at number one overall. Neither are happening. You want to raise so that you can guarantee yourself not falling back as far.
Now, unfortunately, the Islanders did make the playoffs. So currently, that pick you have from the Islanders, so you do guarantee you get it, which you already knew you're going to get regardless. But it's currently sitting at 18th overall. And if for some reason, I think the Islanders have to play the Bruins, so hopefully the Bruins just take care of business. But if the Islanders go on a run, that pick becomes worse and worse in the first round, later and later.
Right.
Which
The
is
further
why
they go, the better or the worse, I guess it gets. Yeah.
Which is why I desperately wanted the Pittsburgh Penguins to make the playoffs. I feel blasphemous just saying that. But if the Penguins made the playoffs, the Islanders would have gotten 13th, 14th, or 15th, or 16th, outside of the playoffs, but not in that protected range that they had, locking them in into a mid-teens, and now it could fall. But I'm hard pressed to see the Bruins losing to the Islanders.
No, for sure. I mean,
anything can happen in the playoffs, right?
It's obviously you want best case scenario, and that's what you root for. But I'm not heartbroken over having whatever. If we end up with 9 and 18 and then 3 picks in the second, I'm gonna still be pretty happy.
Well, and let's talk about those 3 picks in the second too, because I think this is an overlooked aspect of the Red Wings draft. The Red Wings, obviously, like we have just established, have a top 10 pick and then another first-round pick. The Red Wings have confirmed, locked in 3 consecutive second-round picks.
Yeah.
Pick 41, which is their own. Pick 42 from St. Louis, and pick 43 from Vancouver. That gives them 5 picks in the top 50 in this NHL draft. And that, my friends, is very exciting idea that the Red Wings have here, because they have a couple different routes they can go with this. They can either use all 5 of these picks, which wouldn't be my first choice, but I would understand, because you can get gems in the second round, and obviously first round
top
picks.
50 players in a draft. I think most teams would be pretty happy with that.
And of course, we've said it before, and I think I don't know where you stand if you've shifted. I've started to lean. I'm still on the side of trade up or use those to trade, but I've started to lean a little bit back towards it's okay if they use those picks because, like you said, top 5 in the top 50 is not bad.
I've never stated trade up. I
didn't mean trade up.
Use them to trade for a player, like an NHL hockey player. I would still. I mean, there's just so much we don't know yet. Like, we have to see what the offseason plan is going to be. We have to see how much money we end up freeing up, who we don't re-sign, etc. What the holes on this team are going to be. We have a pretty good idea of what they're going to be, but we'll know as a whole, like, who we don't bring back and whatnot. And then obviously free agency is going to be a heck of a time. So, like, we kind of need to know more of the offseason plan, but I would still utilize some of those picks to bring in another NHL caliber player, because you can trade a first and a second, get a pretty darn good hockey player, and still have 3 picks in the top 50.
If you can get away with trading 1 of your firsts and 2 of your seconds for and maybe like some guy from your system, I don't know, for a genuine like goal scorer and one that's young enough to be on this team going forward for a
team
while.
Control, yeah.
And, that's given the fact that we're entering the offseason, we'll probably talk about possible trade scenarios.
Yeah, of course.
Whew, I mean, there's a lot of leverage there.
But, like, again, I'm willing to see what the offseason kind of looks like, how it forms, and I'm certainly not going to be against Yzerman having 5 picks in the top 50 given his draft history.
St. Louis has 3 first-round picks this year.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Chicago has 3 second-round picks as well as I think 2 first-rounders. So there's a lot of it's really crazy when you look at these draft orders and you just see how just picks went everywhere this trade deadline.
Yeah, and last offseason / deadline.
Yeah, because obviously this is the consequences of trades last year too.
Yeah, a lot of people last offseason and 2 trade deadlines ago did like the we'll trade 2 drafts away thing. So it's a lot of ramifications, kind of ripple effect from the last like 20 months.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we come back, we'll wrap this thing up. Final game of the season, final episode of the regular season, and then shoot, on Monday it's
Off-season
off-season
content.
mode. Yeah, off-season content, and we'll be
Crazy.
doing that for 5 days a week until like July.
Yeah, that is important. I think someone asked us on Twitter. We are still at 5 a week until the network deems us in off-season mode, which is not going to be until after the cup at least. So
Yeah.
we'll be at 5 a week for at least the next month and a half at a minimum. I think August is the month where it's like pretty much entirely 3 a week. And then
Yes.
September, obviously, by the end of September, where camp and whatnot, that's when we start kind of creeping back into 5
We
a week.
usually, if I'm recalling correctly, we go to 3 episodes a week mid-July,
Yeah,
and
something
then
like
we
that.
carry that through mid-September. So we're 5 episodes a week until like
maybe it's like
well after free
post-draft.
agency. It's post-free agency
Okay, yeah.
because free agency comes after the draft.
Right,
I
yeah.
think. Yeah. So
So point being, 5 a week for the foreseeable future. No, that next couple of months at least, you still got us for every single day.
All right. When we come back, we're gonna have some fun at our own expense, and then we're gonna thank you, the listeners, for tuning in every single day. Stay tuned to Lockdown Red Wings. Segment 3, Lockdown Red Wings podcast. Scotty, I think it's time to have some fun at our own expense here. At the beginning of the season, we tweeted out our standings predictions.
Oh, heck yeah. I forgot about that.
And we were about half right.
I feel like that,
but where we
I feel
were
like
wrong,
half right is not a great percentage.
Well, this is where we really proved to the people that we can't predict the future. Like,
well, yeah, certainly not. The one that we were both super wrong on, that most people were super wrong on, was the New Jersey Devils.
Yeah. So let's start from the Pacific on the left and go all the way to the Atlantic for my predictions real quick. So I had Edmonton, Calgary in order of how they finished. Edmonton, Calgary, LA, Vegas, Vancouver, Seattle, Anaheim, and San Jose. So I'm not gonna belabor too much like the order in which these teams finished. It's more or less like belabor who made the playoffs and who didn't. I was very wrong on the Seattle Kraken, but I think most people were. I don't think after how they premiered last year, people thought the Seattle Kraken would become a 100-point team.
Yep.
And then the Calgary Flames, I wouldn't say they fell off, but they didn't fall off hard. They just collapsed at the end of the season there, and they were pretty down all year, but they still had 93 points this year. They weren't awful. So that's really in Pacific Division where I made the biggest mistake. How about you? How are you doing in the Pacific Division here? You were in the same boat as I was, and almost I think identically.
I had the Kraken even worse than you. I had the Ducks.
Yes, you're right.
My Ducks bias overtaking me there. Yeah,
that's unfortunate for you. How embarrassing! You had them going 6th and not 7th. Oof.
Super embarrassing. Yeah.
And Central Division, I had it going Colorado, Minnesota, Nashville, St. Louis, Dallas Stars, Winnipeg, Chicago, and Arizona. I was pretty off on the Central Division. I had Dallas Stars missing the playoffs. They won the whole thing. They won the whole division.
Well, Colorado just had a weird year.
They did.
They just never really got a stretch of health under their belt for starters. And
I think Landeskog missed the whole season and is going to still miss the postseason.
Yeah, they just never were able to get like a stretch of hockey where everybody was healthy at the same time. And
I had
still
both
haven't.
The Predators and the Blues make the playoffs, and both teams missed, although the Predators stayed in it for quite a while.
They did. The Blues did not.
No.
The Blues had a rough year.
And then Winnipeg finished in the playoffs as well with a wild card. What about you, buddy? How do you do on this one? I hope it's worse than me. As long as you're worse than me, it's a win. Oh, you had the Dallas Stars make the playoffs, so you're better than me in this one. All right.
Yeah, but I had the Blues finishing 3rd.
So Scotty in the Central had Colorado, Minnesota, Blues, Stars, Predators, Jets, Blackhawks, Coyotes.
Yeah, Winnipeg's style of hockey is hard to predict, man.
It is. New coaching staff came in and were able to rejuvenate it. They stripped their captaincy. That was a weird team. I didn't think they'd be able to
Yeah.
recoup as much as they did. Metro Division, I had Carolina, my first real win, winning the division. That one was easy to predict. New York Rangers, Pittsburgh Penguins, Washington Capitals, Columbus Blue Jackets. What was I thinking?
What on earth?
New York Islanders, New Jersey Devils, and Philadelphia Flyers.
All right, the Metro that's rough, brother.
It's been,
and I don't
rough
think
so
mine
far.
was any better, but like that's rough.
So compare that to the real standings, which finished in the Metro. Hurricanes, Devils, who I'd finishing second to last, finished second. Rangers made the playoffs. I was fine there. Capitals and Penguins missed.
The Islanders is the
Islanders made the playoffs as well. So Islanders are weird. They're a team that I've always liked, but I thought they would make the playoffs last year, and then they were bad.
Yeah.
And so I was like hesitant to say they would make the playoffs this year, and then of course they did.
It's another weird brand of hockey, man. Hard to predict.
Yes, absolutely. And then the Devils, I don't think. I think that's the same. Yeah,
nobody was going into the season going, this team's getting 100 points.
I know. I mean, you could argue that you could foresee them having a breakout year with the amount of talent they had. I was like a wait and see approach. Like I'll believe it when I see it.
Yeah, same. Very much same.
But they exploded on the scene. Now I'm going to defend Columbus here for a second. I completely overestimated the Johnny Gaudreau effect. I thought Johnny Gaudreau would come in there and he would put that team on his back, combined with guys like Patrick Laine. That absolutely came nowhere close to happening. Although they did win in overtime today and maybe stanked their first overall odds.
Which is crazy. Yeah, if the Ducks lose, then the Ducks get the number one odds.
Oh, that's hilarious.
It is crazy how I don't even know if it's a Gaudreau thing specifically more than it is just like the rest of that team is just so much worse than I think we anticipated. Because I don't think I had the Blue Jackets doing too much better. Oh, never mind. Bang. I feel way better. You stink, dude. What a moron.
We should have next year we'll sign like points to these. And for every if we get a team right in the correct spot, like that's gonna be like worth like 3 points. If we predict a team make the playoffs and they do, that'll be like worth 2. And then if we predict like division winners, that'll be worth like 5 or something like that. So like we'll create like a point system. That way at the end of next season, we can tally up and see
we'll have to do that.
Who's a better predictor. You had Hurricanes, Rangers, Penguins, Capitals, Islanders, Devils, Jackets, and Flyers. So where you were much better than me was in your prediction of where the Jackets would finish.
Yeah, the Jackets helped me out. I remember going into the season thinking Philly was going to be like maybe the worst team in hockey. Yeah. And the fact that they hung together like they were, I mean, not like in the race or anything, but they were, near that 10th overall pick for most of the year. So like the fact that they were kind of able to muster out that type of season is relatively impressive considering where I thought they were going to be this year. But yeah, like the Jackets, definitely, I was a lot closer on that one, but just the Devils is what I keep going back to, man. That's definitely the breakout team of the league this year.
And now let's go to the Atlantic Division, the final division, the Red Wings division. I had Toronto running away with the division, followed by Tampa Bay. Florida, I thought would slide back, but still get a divisional spot. Boston Bruins as a wild card team. Ottawa 5th, Detroit 6th, Buffalo 7th, Montreal 8th. Which I'm sure you all know in reality, but just for posterity, I will say it anyways. Boston ran away with the entire league, winning the President's Trophy with like 2 weeks remaining in the season.
Didn't they set a record?
They did. They set the points record and wins record. Toronto, which snapped the Red Wings.
One of the best regular seasons in the history of hockey.
The best regular season. Toronto Maple Leafs 2nd, Tampa Bay Lightning 3rd, Florida Panthers wild card 4th, Sabres, Senators, Red Wings, Montreal. So really the only place I slipped up on here was predicting where Boston would fall, which again I think is another team that nobody would have expected to have been that good.
Well, that's been the thing for what? 4 years? Yeah. Like every year for the last like 3 or 4 years, everybody going into the season is like, oh, this is the year Boston's going to fall off. They're too old. This is the year Boston's going to fall off. This year, their old players continued being good, but B, their young players took such massive leaps forward that they became like 90 and 100 point scorers.
But for as far as the Atlantic Division goes, you can clearly tell this is the division that I am comfortable with the best, or the most comfortable with, because there's only two teams that would shift in this situation. Buffalo would shift above the Red Wings,
Right.
and Boston would shift above everyone.
Yeah.
Let's look at you real quick. How did you fare?
I don't remember.
Almost the same, just one team different, and you had the Red Wings finishing 5th, where I had them
I had the
finishing
Wings.
6th.
I remember doing the Wings ahead because I was like, screw it, I'm gonna be a homer, and Brian's not. I remember saying something like that. But yeah, I mean, we both had Boston as the wild card team, which obviously didn't come true. But yeah,
Man, Buffalo.
Buffalo. I
Great
mean,
year.
like, who could have predicted like a 7-foot tall forward was just gonna be an unbelievable hockey player this season, and Tage Thompson was just gonna become the second coming. Like
He is him.
that was a tough one for sure, but definitely changed the direction of that organization kind of in one season.
Yeah, without a doubt. And so the Red Wings finished the year with 80 points, just shy of 500-point percentage, and 7th in the division. That's 6 points better, but one standing position worse. And, on Sunday, we're going to talk about whether or not we think this season was a success. But before we let you go, Scotty, before we let the people go, Scotty, we got to thank the people for taking the time to listen to us every single day and listen to us sometimes put out really good episodes and sometimes be fools like we were today. Mostly me. I'll own up to it.
No,
But
mostly I think me, but it's no, man. It's wild, just thinking of I really love this community we have, that tune in every single day is it's a funny thing we say at the end of the show, but the fact that we have a legitimate, community of a lot of people now that tune into this show every single day is it's unreal, man. This is something that I've said this before on the show, but if you would have told, like elementary or middle school me that, someday I'd get to get in front of a camera every day and talk about the Red Wings and the Tigers, and people would enjoy tuning in, I hope, then I would have probably cried. So definitely something that I am forever grateful for, and it's obviously only because of the listeners we get every day that we're able to take time and do this every day.
did you ever think you'd be doing it with a guy whose number one genre on Spotify is anime?
I think the bigger red flag is a bald guy.
Oh, wow. That's just straight up persecution at that point.
I think I would have looked in the mirror when I was in middle school and I had an afro going, and I'd have been like, really? I'm gonna be carrying the weight for the hair quota on these shows, but
You also
no,
carry the height.
we've talked about it before too, but the show, like I was obviously here when it was Nolan and I at first, and Nolan was laid the groundwork for all of this, and it was Nolan and I for whatever 6-8 months, and then
I was there. I was just in the background.
yeah, you were producer Brian. Never forget when you were producer Brian. But real ones know producer Brian, not enforcer Brian. That's a deep cut. But yeah, and then Brian took over, and I think the show is good. Like I really do think that not only do we work well together, on air, and we kind of flow well, but honestly, just the fact that like some people we give each other a lot of crap, and some people don't realize it, but like we're genuinely like friends. Like Brian and I are like tight and like talk, and it's
Like
just funny.
I will call you sometimes just to talk.
Right.
There have been times I've driven home from hockey and like I need to talk to someone about the game, and I'll call Scotty because I know he's the only one who's awake at like 11:30 at night.
It's just it's a cool dynamic to not only do this with somebody who like I greatly respect hockey opinion wise, but to do it with somebody, come on here and do it with someone that's an actual friend is awesome. So it's awesome. Obviously, again, like the listeners are the reason we're even here and the only reason that this is like a thing worth doing. So very, very appreciative as always. And another season under the belt, man. For you, that's two. That's
Yeah.
2 full seasons now. And I think for me, I forget it's 2.5 years, but like I forget because that was the weird,
Yeah,
not the
too
COVID
short.
season, but the year after that was still scheduled weird
Yeah,
because the last one got pushed back. So like I don't know. I think it's like 2.5 seasons or something like that. But yeah, we're still here, man. It's really cool. And like I said, love the community we have more than anything, man. It's unbelievably cool.
absolutely. And Scotty, I mean, obviously I reflect all the same sentiments with you. Coming on here, we had never. No, that's not true. You guested once on my old podcast, and we talked
That's
Tigers.
right. I did.
But outside of that one-off occasion, we had never done an episode of anything together, and it was like thrown into the fire. And I could not have been more happy with the instant chemistry that we seem to have sparked off, and it sparked off an entire friendship because of that, to the point where like we go to like Red Wings events together now. And it's just, I'm grateful for you, and I'm grateful for all of the listeners who take the time to listen to us be dumbasses day in and day out. Because as much as I think I know about hockey, there is more that I don't know than I do know. And so a lot of times I'm learning with the listener
Yeah.
as we do these episodes. And I'm appreciative of everyone who takes, understands that and listens and learns with us, because that's what this is all about, is learning with this team and watching it grow. And so
Right.
it's just been an absolute blast. And again, incredibly grateful for you and all the listeners.
For sure, man. It's and also I feel like saturated has a negative connotation, but in a market where there is so many options to listen to, and I know a lot of people listen to multiple, and that's awesome. I want to support everyone because honestly, when one of us grows, we all kind of grow. So like I don't view it much as a competition. We have a lot of very, very talented media personnel in this city, which is something that we should all be very fortunate of. But the fact that people see us and voluntarily choose when there's so many options out there to tune into us is something that I will never take for granted. And again, people like start their day, drive to work, like getting ready in the morning, home from work, whatever. Like that's the thing that really resonates with me is like, even if it's half an hour, this one's clearly going to be like 40 minutes long, like taking time out of your day to listen to what we have to say is just an unbelievable honor that I will that I will always feel is an unbelievable honor. So
Completely agree. All right, Scotty, one last time for the regular season. Do you have any final thoughts?
we ball, baby. We absolutely ball.
We ball without a single doubt in the world. We'll be back with a new episode on Sunday talking about whether or not the season was a success. Same time, same place. It's your team every day.
Every day.